Sometimes when you attack a head inside single, even though you're trying to stay on your feet without hitting your knees, sometimes you do get pulled down to the mat. And it's important to be able to know what to do when you are pulled down to the mat, to have confidence in that position, as well as to have some techniques to be able to finish that attack, even though you might have been at least somewhat defended against as you initially came in, as you were pulled down to your knees. First thing I want to discuss is just the basic position. If I get hit to where I'm attacking in and Colby gets me down to the ground, there's a couple things I think that are important. First of all, I want to think about a certain type of a frame or mechanical type position here. Colby's goal is to get out in front and to pull me forward. His goal is to get me off my haunches back here and get me forward. And his second goal is to be able to keep my head down. And he's going to do that by coming out directly in front of me and putting the back of my head in the lower part of his abdomen or chest. So, the first thing I need to do when I'm in this position is I want to get some type of an angle. I don't want to have Colby come out here. How do I prevent that? First, I want to keep my head up. Notice it's harder for him to come around with my head up than if my head is down. Come around, no problem. If my head is up, that's more difficult. Next, I want to keep my weight back. If my weight is forward, my head is down. I'm in very poor position mechanically here. So it's crucial I can keep my weight back. It's crucial I keep my head up. When I keep my head up, I kind of think of it as not like sticking my neck out and lifting up. I'm shrugging my shoulders here because I want to use my shoulder power, and I'm pushing in. I'm pushing in up at an angle because I'm trying to prevent Colby from pushing my head down and sliding over it and coming out in front. The next thing I want you to consider, instead of pulling the leg in, I want you to think about some type of a post down here, either triangle or something of that nature. And this is why. If I'm in here and I have a single on Colby, as soon as I let go and grab his leg, I've got no real post out in front of me. So he can pull me forward much easier. By virtue of grabbing his leg, I'm not able to keep that head pressure up by virtue of the frame down here. Also, when I pull the leg in, there's a tendency for my head to go down. There's a tendency when people pull the leg in, especially when we're down on the ground, for their head to, it's hard to do this and this at the same time. There's a tendency for you to kind of keep your head down because we feel stronger. Like when I'm pulling something in, I'm not going to be typically like this. I'm going to be pulling in. There's a tendency for your head to drop. So I don't have a good mechanical position if I'm just pulling the leg in because my head is going to tend to go down. Next, in this position here, consider posting, and if you can, in a triangle, almost like this. And from this position, I keep my head up, my weight is back. Notice I'm pushing up and away, so my head goes down, he comes out in front, but as long as I keep my head up, I'm in good shape here. Okay? Now, even if he pulls this leg up, I still have a post here. Okay? I keep my head up. I don't want him to get my head down. As soon as I do, I'm beat. I'm in bad shape here. Reality is that most people in this situation are going to be fairly rigid. As I'm pulling in or as I'm posting in hard here, my opponent's not going to be relaxed. They're going to have a tight sprawl, and pretty much their whole body is going to be fairly rigid. Next, in addition to head position, your shoulder position is very important. When I'm in here, and from here, in this position here, and I'm pushing, even if Colby's leg is out, I want to keep my shoulder right here along the side of his hip. I don't want to get it too low here. When I'm in here, I want my shoulder up high, as opposed to my shoulder being low down here. So In this position, I'm just trying to maintain basically a frame here and from here. If he lifts up, one of my first options is to just come underneath him. Again, I said a moment ago, in reality, in this situation, he's going to be very rigid. And it's not a hard thing from this position, if he's really rigid and stiff, for me to put my weight close to him and come up and lift him up. It's much more difficult if Colby here is kind of like jelly and just flopping over me. It's harder to lift in that situation. But that's not how reality is when you're actually wrestling hard. He's pulling his leg out. Notice I'm going to come in first, deep, because I can't lift here. His center of gravity is here. I got to get underneath his center of gravity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my head up. I'm going to reach in here. I'm going to pop my head through, and notice my hips travel under his as a fulcrum to this position. You keep tight, and I'm blocking, I'm pushing in. Again, I don't want to be fading away because my head's going to tend to come down. I'm tight, I'm pushing in, I'm pushing in. If I feel him rigid in this position, I reach, I get close to his center of gravity, which is here. I lift the leg, I duck. Notice my butt comes under center of gravity and up. And then I'm going to push and come through. Of course, 115-pound Rich Salamone isn't going to do this against a 160-pound competitor. This is one of those techniques that you have to be at least roughly the same size. So I'm in this position here. He's pulling. I'm certainly not going to do this now, because as soon as I do, I'm dead meat. And I know I don't have a lot of time in here, quite frankly, because I'm not in the greatest of position. But I'm in here, I keep tight, I'm pushing my head up, because he's probably going to be pushing it down, and I come through. Now from here, I'm underneath. Now if I had trouble coming this way, come the opposite. Tugging down on the back of one knee, pushing up on the other. Alternatively, on the other side, pulling down on the back of one knee, pushing up on the other. So I'm in this position, he's sprawled out. Notice, I keep my head up. I prefer to keep my hand down here if I could. This is a much better position here. But we're going to say he pulls away. As soon as I feel I'm loosening it here, I'm going to come underneath. And I feel like he can go over easier that side. So that's the side I transition to. You'll feel that. More weight on this side, boom, that way. More weight on that side, boom, this way. So again, when I'm in this position, which isn't great position, I've got my initial attack defended, I was pulled down to the mat. I regroup here and try to keep tough in this position. Head up, weight back on my haunches here. I don't want it to be pulled forward. I don't want my head coming down. At this point, and we're going to go over some finishes, but this is actually a particular finish that will work best after my opponent has actually started to pull his leg away. He pulls his leg away. In other words, my hands were on the ground. I had my frame here. I'm pushing in. He's overpowering me. If he's doing that, if this leg is coming out and it's really rigid as he's pushing his hips into me, his whole body is stiff. And of course, it's easier to lift a board that's stiff than something that weighs about the same and has about the same shape that is a lot more flexible or a lot softer. So, by virtue of him being very stiff and rigid, it helps me come into him. So as he's pulling that leg back, and I feel like my hand is losing it here, I'm not able to keep it, I'm not able to keep that frame, that's when I want to come underneath and I want to be looking up hard here. That being said, you need to be aware of where his hip position is relative to your head. So if I'm in this position, which is good position here, notice where my head is here. Slide down a little further. If my head is in this position, that's no good for me here. I'm too far away. There's no way I'm going to be able to get underneath. That's not going to happen. So when I have this single in here, notice how deep I am here on the leg. I want to do my best to stay high up on his hip here and not further down or further up towards his chest. This is not nearly as favorable position, or at least it's a lot less favorable than this is right here. This position I have a little bit more control here because I'm controlling his hips a little bit better. So that particular finish is not good or it's an improbable position to finish from if your opponent is able to shimmy away from you such that your body is getting further and further up away from his hips, more towards his chest. If I'm unable to lift, it's crucial that I can maintain some type of an angle here. If I have a single in this position here, I need to maintain some type of an angle. The more my opponent is out in front of me, the worse off I am. So, when I'm in this position, I always want to endeavor to keep some type of an angle here and not be in this position here. I want to be more in this position like I'm in right now. From here. I want to keep my head up. I want to keep a frame here.